I'm going to play for you a video clip of what Michael Wolff said Epstein told him was in the safe and what he showed the author was in this safe. Okay, so that's great. So wouldn't it be great if FBI subpoenaed the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for all that information?
The estate is under no obligation to provide that material, even pursuant to a subpoena. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's just false.
Okay.
That's just false. You're the frickin' FBI. You can subpoena the information from the estate, and you better do that.
Kash Patel stepped into that hearing room thinking he was completely prepared. He'd spent hours getting ready and had all his talking points down cold. As the FBI director, he was geared up for a tough session. But then Ted Lieu did something remarkably straightforward. He didn't pull out paperwork or try to trap him in legal technicalities. He simply pressed play on an audio recording. What came blasting out of those speakers wasn't just some minor mistake. It was a head-on confrontation about whether Kash Patel is truly in charge of one of his agency's biggest, most controversial investigations.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Patel walked in confident, but Liu's strategy revealed something much more troubling. An FBI director who appeared either unwilling or incapable of using the full authority of the agency he's supposed to be running. When questioned about issuing subpoenas to the Epstein estate for materials the public has never accessed, Patel didn't stand behind that power. Instead, he downplayed it and acted like the FBI couldn't do much about it. Liu shot back immediately, his tone cutting and direct. That's completely wrong. You are the FBI. You have the power to subpoena that information, and you need to do it. That heated moment wasn't just some minor detail. It kicked off a 5-minute grilling that exposed serious, troubling holes in how aggressively the FBI has actually gone after the Epstein case. As the person in charge, Patel is ultimately responsible. But his responses reeked of avoidance and uncertainty, and that was just the beginning. What Liu brought up next, information supposedly taken straight from Epstein's own safe, is going to leave you stunned. Don't go anywhere. You absolutely need to hear this.
Elected. I was sitting talking to Epstein, and he said, "Wait a minute, I got to show you something." And then he went into his safe, and he came out with photographs. They were Polaroids, I think, and he kind of spread them out like playing cards, and it was Trump. I mean, I think there were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with girls of an uncertain age at Epstein's Palm Beach house, where all of the things that he would ultimately be accused of took place. And I remember very vividly 3 of them. There are 2 in which Trump is, the girls, topless girls, are sitting on Trump's lap. And then a 3rd in which he has a stain on the front of his pants. And the girls are kind of pointing at it, sort of bent over, laughing.
Take a moment to really think about what you just heard, because it sets up everything that follows. That wasn't some leaked FBI document or sealed court record. That was Michael Wolff, the journalist who wrote Fire and Fury, explaining on video exactly what he claims Jeffrey Epstein personally took out of his own safe and laid out on a table like he was dealing cards. According to Wolff, he spent around 100 hours in recorded interviews with Epstein spread across several years, an extraordinary collection he's publicly defended, including a 2024 release where Epstein allegedly called Donald Trump his closest friend for 10 solid years. Here's why this matters so much. Again and again, the biggest revelations in this case come from journalists, estates, and private recordings, never from the FBI taking the lead. So when the FBI director sits before Congress under oath and flatly denies that any such material exists or was ever seriously chased down, the real issue isn't whether Wolff's account is bulletproof evidence. The real issue is how the country's top law enforcement officer can be so absolutely certain when his own agency keeps finding out the truth after everyone else does. That troubling disconnect is exactly what Ted Lieu zeroed in on next, and Patel's responses became even more telling.
So, Director Patel, I'm going to ask you a very broad and general question. As you know, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends. There are, of course, photos showing Donald Trump together with Epstein, correct?
I don't have the entirety of the photographs, but I think they've been photographed in public together.
All right. Are there any photos showing Donald Trump with girls of an uncertain age?
No,
How do you know that?
because that information would have been brought to light by multiple administrations and FBI investigators over the course of the last 20 years.
Well, you know what? That's just not true, because no one knew about the creepy birthday message that Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein until the Wall Street Journal disclosed it, and then all of a sudden, the Epstein estate provides it to Congress.
Well,
So certainly, you weren't there at the search. You don't know what Epstein may or may not have done with those photographs even prior to the search. Maybe someone has it. Maybe the Epstein estate has it.
You raise a great point.
Patel's whole defense came down to one bold assertion. If anything significant existed, 20 years of investigations across multiple administrations would have already dug it up. That's it. One line. But Lieu already had the perfect example to tear that argument apart: the birthday letter. For background, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released a card from Epstein's 50th birthday book with Trump's name on it, featuring a drawn silhouette and a suggestive imagined conversation between the two. The Wall Street Journal first reported it, and later Congress received it, not from the FBI, but directly from the Epstein estate. Trump has publicly said he didn't write it and has taken legal steps against the Journal over the story. Whatever the truth about the letter actually is, one thing isn't debatable: it stayed hidden for years. When it finally came out, it came from outside journalists and estate disclosures, not from any proactive work by the FBI that Patel now leads. Not the FBI. Outside pressure. Lieu didn't even need the letter to be real to score his point. He just needed it to show that Patel's "it would have surfaced by now" reasoning falls apart. And Patel had actually given him that ammunition himself just weeks before during the same news cycle. That's why Patel's backpedaling is so significant. You raise a great point, not a rebuttal, not a defense of the agency's track record. A live, under oath admission from the man whose job is to know what his own bureau has and hasn't uncovered. His main argument had just crumbled right there on live TV. And instead of pushing back, he agreed. That's the underlying theme here. Not outright refusal, but evasion disguised as agreement. Giving just enough to get past the question without actually answering it. Lieu wasn't done yet. He had one more loose end to pull. The single piece of physical evidence that could settle this once and for all.
So I'm going to ask you, have you asked to talk to Michael Wolff?
You raise a great point. I haven't personally asked to talk to
Has the
Michael
FBI
Wolff,
asked?
but
you
the
to Michael Wolff?
FBI, I'll get back to you if the FBI specifically
So Michael Wolff
asked
has
ever.
about 100 hours of testimony of Jeffrey Epstein. Wouldn't it be good for the FBI to interview Michael Wolff?
I'm not saying they haven't, I just don't know.
Has FBI subpoenaed the tapes that Michael Wolff has conducted of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know.
100 hours. Really let that sink in. 100 hours of recorded talks between Michael Wolff and Jeffrey Epstein. The biggest known private collection of insight into Epstein's life that exists outside government hands. Parts of it have already been made public and sparked major news stories. Yet under oath, the FBI director admits he doesn't know if his own agency ever subpoenaed those recordings or even reached out to the journalist who has them. Think about that response. This isn't Patel refusing to comment to protect an ongoing investigation for security reasons. That would be normal. This is the FBI director openly saying he has no clue if his bureau made any attempt at all to get hold of the largest known recorded Epstein archive out there. Not, "we looked at it and found nothing." Not, "it's still under review." Just, "I don't know." Getting a grand jury subpoena for recordings that are already public knowledge, held by an identified American journalist, is one of the easiest moves federal investigators can make. No secret warrants, no dealing with foreign governments. It only requires deciding the material is worth going after. 3 years after Epstein's death, under a director who once loudly called for total transparency on this case, the answer to Congress was still, nobody bothered to check. Either the Bureau didn't pursue the most obvious lead in the entire investigation, or its own director is too out of the loop to know what's happening. Both options are damning. And that credibility gap is what Lieu was about to hammer home with one last question.
That's literally not how it works.
I'm going to move on now and talk about Epstein's client list. You confirmed that it exists. Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed earlier this year that it exists. So I just want to ask you a simple question. Is Prince Andrew on Epstein's client list?
The material related to Prince Andrew has been made public.
Is Prince Andrew on the client list?
We have released the index of names
All right,
that were in Jeffrey Epstein's.
Is Donald Trump on Epstein's client list?
The index has been released, and the index will speak for
So I'm
itself.
just going to say, America, there's a huge red flag. The FBI director could not answer
Gentlemen.
whether Donald Trump was on Epstein's
Gentleman's time
client
has
list.
expired.
I
You're
yield
now
back.
recognized.
Notice Liu's approach here. He didn't ask vaguely about the list. He asked about two specific individuals, one right after the other, immediately after Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi had already separately confirmed on the record that a client list actually exists. That's the setup. You can't say there's a list and then refuse to say whether a specific person is on it, because refusing to answer becomes the answer itself. Patel's reply to both names was exactly the same in structure. He pointed back to the index instead of confirming or denying anything. Basically, he said to look at a document and let it speak for itself, which, conveniently, it can't do in real time during a hearing. That's exactly why Liu was asking a person, not requesting paperwork. If the honest answer had been no, saying so would have cost the FBI nothing and ended the question. Patel didn't say it twice. And this wasn't a one-off moment. Earlier in that same hearing, Representative Daniel Goldman, himself a former federal prosecutor, told Patel flat out, "You are hiding the Epstein files. You are part of the cover-up." Later, the Republican-controlled committee voted 20-19 to block a Democratic motion from Representative Jamie Raskin to subpoena four major banks: J.P. Morgan, Bank of New York, Bank of America, and Deutsche Bank. Over $1.5 billion in transactions those banks themselves had flagged as suspicious and linked to Epstein. Raskin played old footage of Patel from before he became director, where he publicly demanded the files be fully released. Representative Pramila Jayapal called it a giant cover-up. None of this happened randomly. It all took place in the same room, the same afternoon, revolving around the same three questions Liu kept circling. What does the FBI actually have? What has it actually gone after? And why won't the director just say? Put it all together. A journalist's first-hand claim about photographs the FBI director said couldn't possibly exist, followed by Patel admitting his own reasoning for that claim had already been disproven weeks earlier. A 100-hour interview archive the FBI hasn't confirmed it ever tried to get, and a client list the director helped confirm exists, followed by refusing to say who's actually on it. Three separate lines of questioning. Three responses that were technically answers without ever truly answering anything. That's the part worth really thinking about, because this wasn't just 5 minutes of political theater. It was a test of whether the FBI under Kash Patel is actually capable of what the public has been demanding for years on this case. Real accountability, not carefully managed spin. And by the time the gavel came down, the pattern was clear. A congressman with real investigative background methodically went through the basics of the case, one confirmed fact at a time. And repeatedly, Patel chose deflection over clarity, uncertainty over authority, and careful phrasing over a straight answer. Here's what makes it hit even harder. This is the same guy who, before running the FBI, spent years publicly demanding the Epstein files be fully released. The footage Raskin showed that very afternoon. The person once seen as the outsider who'd finally force accountability on the system is now the one inside it, giving the system's oldest line, "I don't know. I'll accept your representation." The index will speak for itself. That contradiction is as much the story as any single exchange. And it fits a pattern that keeps showing up across this entire case. The birthday letter didn't come from the FBI. It came from the Wall Street Journal and the estate. Wolf's account of the safe isn't an FBI discovery. It's a journalist's own archive built independently years before any of this testimony. Even the client list itself only exists publicly because Congress and the Attorney General confirmed it, not because the Bureau volunteered it. Every time something concrete surfaces in this case, it comes from outside the FBI, not from within. That's not a fluke. That's the pattern Liu's questions were designed to expose. And that's why "I don't know" from the director carries more weight than it would from almost anyone else in that room. None of this requires guesswork to be damaging. Nobody needs to make up a smoking gun. The actual congressional record does the work by itself. A director who can't confirm his agency followed its most obvious lead. A director who backs off his central claim mid-conversation instead of defending it. A director who won't give a simple yes or no about two names after confirming the list they'd supposedly be on exists. Those are the facts, under oath, on the permanent record. They don't vanish when the news cycle moves on. They get replayed, referenced, and brought up again the next time Patel is back in that chair. That's what this really boils down to. Not one viral moment, but a documented pattern the country can now judge for itself. An agency whose biggest revelations keep coming from everywhere except itself. And a director whose go-to response under pressure is some version of "I can't say," dressed up as procedure. Whether that's incompetence, overcaution, or something people have good reason to be more suspicious about. That's the question this hearing leaves hanging, and it's not going away. If you want to keep following where the Epstein investigation actually stands, based on what was said under oath, not the version spun for clicks, subscribe and drop a comment about what you think this pattern really means. We'll keep tracking this as it unfolds.